Hello, my name is Balaji, and I'm a principal with AWS Identity Services. I help customers such as you define their identity and governance strategy for their AWS environment. And I'm happy to have you here today to join us on episode 2 of how to establish the foundational governance capabilities that support your cloud migration. And I have here with me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Torres. I am a specialist solutions architect with AWS. I've been with AWS for about 3 years. This is just a recap from the first episode. I'm happy to have you back here with us. Thank you.
Well, let's get started. On episode 2, we'll take a look at guardrails and centralized management of your security tools. Agenda today is a very quick recap of episode 1. And then we'll take a look at how to go about organizing security tooling and AWS security services in your environment. And then we'll take a look at establishing guardrails for that environment, and then jump into the workshop where Alex will take us through the configuration of security services. So for a quick recap, we discussed cloud migration and its benefits for AWS customers. And then we talked about the 3 phases of cloud migration. In assess phase, we build the business case for migration, build a plan, and in the mobilize phase, among a lot of other things, we build the foundational environment that will then host your production workloads that are migrated as part of the 3rd phase, and then you go about transforming your IT infrastructure by modernizing your workloads on AWS. And our focus was the foundational environment, and we discussed how, as you build that foundational environment, you're going to need to make a lot of decisions across different domains about what security services to use, about what AWS services are the best fit for your applications, but how to fit partners within your IT operations, and then how to choose the right developer tools and the database services that provide the best value for your business. And we discussed how Cloud Foundations is the AWS guidance that has a goal to provide everything that you need to establish that foundational environment and open the cloud for business. And we looked at how governance is about balancing the need to control with the need to enable your builders to innovate and resolve your business challenges on the cloud. Now, governance capability, we also saw, covers people, process, and technology. And many of the controls that implement your governance policies are layered throughout other capabilities. And here we saw how capabilities can be a container for the use cases, definitions, and everything that you need to build in order to establish that capability in your environment. We talked about the Cloud Foundations white paper, and we saw how you could layer in governance controls as part of getting started with the identity management and access control capability, and the log storage capability, and the tagging capability. Now, before we get started with episode 2, I would like to hand this over to Alex, my colleague, who will walk us through a managed service that can help build the foundational environment.
Thank you, Balaji. So, as we were discussing on how to set up all the environment on the last episode, we saw how to set up a management account, how to create OUs and accounts. And we have AWS Control Tower. That is a managed service that can help you automate the deployment of the initial multi-account environment, right, on your AWS account. AWS Control Tower, the initial deployment, it creates that security OU that we talked through, and the sandbox OU as well. And it creates a security tooling on the log archive account. On the last episode, we set up part of the log archive account, and today we're going to be focusing on that security tooling account. But what Control Tower does for you is deploy that initial IAM Identity Center deployment, creates that instance, and allows you to start working with it. It also deploys an account factory that allows you to create repeatable accounts in a repeatable manner. I mean, deploying blueprints across all of these accounts. Within the security tooling account, it deploys a config aggregator. And in the log archive account, it sets up the aggregation of all these logs and the CloudTrail logs, right? You will still need to do parts of the steps that we saw in the first episode, configuring IAM Identity Center, right? And AWS Config Aggregator and Config will be enabled on all the accounts that are vended through that account factory and control tower. I'll walk you today through how to set up that config aggregator in the security tooling account, delegated administration of that. And we will not be diving into the log archive account since we set that up on the last episode. But basically, control tower would take care of that for you. So as we move forward, I want to start talking about guardrails and centralized management of the security tools, right? And in order to do so, I would like to start talking about two features that AWS Organizations offers: Trusted Access and Delegated Administrator. Trusted Access enables compatible services in AWS to perform operations across your entire environment. Basically, you're granting that trusted access to the management account in your organization to use these services across all the accounts. With Delegated Administrator, what we achieve is to get that access outside of the management account. So the different services that are managed by different teams in your organization can access these services from different accounts without having to access that management account. And that allows you to delegate security services to a security account that your team would manage, or operations service or cloud operations services to an operations tooling account that your operations team would handle. There is a compatibility table that we have in the AWS Organizations user guide, so you can check all the services that support these features. Today, we're going to be focusing on delegating the administration of some of these security services to that security tooling account. So starting with the infrastructure accounts, these are the accounts that would live on the on the infrastructure OU. We would have the operations tooling account, the networking account, and the shared services accounts, right? These accounts are, in a way, all of them considered shared services accounts, but the operations tooling and the networking accounts are like special cases that we would like to highlight. The networking account is where you can set up that centralized networking management. Operations tooling accounts are like what I was mentioning earlier. Your operations team or your cloud operations team can have tools here to manage all your environment. And let's dive deep a little bit into these accounts, right? Like, for example, the operations tooling account, you could use it to delegate AWS CloudFormation and AWS Systems Manager. So your operations account could use these two services to like do their daily inspections or remediate things that happen, or like access the accounts and then like things that the operations teams would use Systems Manager for, right? And CloudFormation for. You can deploy resources across your entire environment. You can benefit from some of the features like quick setup, etc. As we move to the shared services account or accounts, these are accounts that can be used for your teams to deploy, for example, IAM Identity Center or AWS License Manager. And that delegation would allow you to like remove that access as well from that management account. So for example, you would have your identity team managing access, or your the team in charge of managing your Active Directory could have that on its own account. And you can have as many accounts as you need. You might start just with one and put in all the services that are shared and that don't meet the networking use case or the operations tooling use case into a shared service account, or you can spread that and have as many accounts as you need. And now we're going to just start focusing on those security accounts within the security OU, right? The log archive account is something that we set on the last episode, so we're not going to really be diving into that one. Today, we're going to focus on that security tooling. That is the account that your security team would use to deploy all their security tools and services. So here's a list of some of those delegated services that we can use in that account. Security Hub, GuardDuty, Macy, Amazon Detective, that config aggregator, and AWS IAM Access Analyzer, right? And we can delegate that feature to this account, so we wouldn't have our security team working within the management account. And that's one of our security best practices, right? We want to limit the access to that management account to only operators or actors that need to be operating on it. So when we are talking about how to configure these services in a multi-account environment that is two different types, right? The governance services and the security services. So CloudTrail and Config and Identity, IAM Identity Center would be considered those like more governance kind of services. With CloudTrail, you could audit, like you can create trails that help you audit what's happening in your environment. And with Config, you can monitor all the changes to the supported resource size across your environment and aggregate them in a view. So you can later on like perform remediations and things like that to the resources that are not compliant. And you can deploy conformance packs, that is a feature within AWS Config that allows you to hold these resources that are supported to certain compliance standards like NIST or AWS security best practices. And for the security services, right, AWS Security Hub is a cloud security posture management services that performs checks against best practices and aggregates alerts. And you can set up automated remediation for those alerts and checks that are performed. GuardDuty is a threat detection service that monitors your environment and all your accounts and workloads to find malicious activity and gathers all the findings like in a detailed manner so you can see what's happening and you can choose to remediate or not. Based on these findings, you can also use Amazon Detective that makes it really easy to analyze and investigate and quickly identify the root cause of these issues. It uses machine learning, graph theory, and statistical analysis to build a linked set of data that can help you with all of this. Access Analyzer helps you to identify resources in your organizations and accounts that might be shared externally, and it also helps you to validate IAM policies against grammar and best practices that we recommend. Additionally, you can use Access Analyzer to continually scan access that is set up on cloud, like through the CloudTrail events that are being logged, and you can generate IAM policies following the less privileged principles across your environment. And last, Amazon Mazy, that is a fully managed data security and data privacy services that uses also machine learning and pattern matching to discover and protect all your sensitive data that is stored on AWS. The last thing that I wanted to talk to is control recommendations, right? And I just want to dive into the different types of controls that we have. We have preventive and detective controls. Preventive controls are those that are passive in a way. Think about them as like the service control policies that we establish. It's just a way of denying permissions, and it is a proactive control, right? You don't have, like, it wouldn't do anything in your environment. It will just limit actions and things that are happening. We can use identity and access management policies and roles and users to ensure that the different actors can do different things across your environment, and service control policies to limit what actions you can do across your entire environment. And detective controls will rely on a reactive kind of remediation. So event detection and infrastructure detection that happens, for example, with config and config rules or CloudWatch event notifications. When something happens, these detective controls would identify that event, and then you can set up different remediation and different like according to your compliance requirements or any other requirements that you may have in your environment, and you can automatically remediate them, send alerts or certain alarms to the interested parties in your environment. So let's move and let's start working on how to like implement these things, right? Like we have a virtual workshop that we're going to be working through, and we're going to start configuring those security services in your environment. If you want to follow along with this workshop, here's a QR code that will link you to the workshop itself, and you can follow along with the steps. Now that we're in our console, we have to log into like the different accounts. So for that, we're going to log into our Identity Center instance. So for that, let's find the URL that would allow you to log in, right? So the first thing that we want to do, we want to go in Identity Center. If you didn't save it on the last episode, click on Settings and grab that AWS Access URL. So when you click on it, this would take you to the different accounts that you had configured in your environment. You may need to log in order to access these accounts, but I had logged in already. So we're going to start by logging into our management account. And once in here, today we're gonna do a bit different that we did last time. We're gonna use the CLI instead of using the console to set up that multi-account delegated administration for the different services. So in order to do that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use Cloud Shell. Cloud Shell is just a service that enables you to have a CLI with credentials in your account and basically assumes the role that you have logged in with. So we'll just use this. It takes a couple minutes to set up. So let's just wait while this completes. Awesome. So this is ready. If you're following along on the workshop, if you grab the link from the QR code, we're gonna go on step 2, set up a central AWS config. We already set up Cloud Shell on our previous episode, so we're just gonna start with that one. And the first thing what we're gonna do is wanna make sure that we enable the trusted access for config, right? And in order to do that, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna paste this command that is AWS Organizations enable AWS service access for the config setup. This will enable us to do that multi-account and the delegated admin kind of setup that we need. So we're gonna paste that, and then we're gonna click enter, and there you go. The service went through. Now the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna enable, we're gonna register that delegated administrator into our environment. So this is the next command that we need to do. So AWS Organizations register delegated administrator that will allow us to register that delegation for the principal that we set up, and we're going to specify that account ID. In our case, we're going to specify the security tooling account. So we can go to our Identity Center instance here. Whoops. I guess here. And then we'll get that number from our security tooling account. We'll go back to Cloud Shell, and we will replace that number here. Now we're delegating that administrator to our security tooling account. So we paste it, and okay, let's get it again. It seems that I have already registered it. So let's just, for the sake of checking, we can deregister the delegated administrator, and we can register it again. This time it won't fail. So now what we can do is we can check that that delegated administrator has been registered, right? So we can go here and do list the delegated administrators for our multi-account setup. So we paste this, we'll see that it lists it here. And this is our security service, our security tooling account ID. So the next thing that we're gonna delegate is config. So we're gonna go ahead and, well, first, let's make sure that we have the trusted access enabled. That's required for delegated administrator. So we enable that trusted access. We paste this. Great. And the same thing we did earlier. We're gonna do the register delegated administrator of config to our security tooling account. And again, we're gonna come here, we're gonna grab this account ID again. We're gonna come back here and we're gonna paste it to make sure that, just in case I had registered it before, I'm gonna deregister it first, and then we're gonna go ahead and register it again. Now that it's registered, we can do the same thing that we did earlier, and we can list it to make sure that it's configured there, right? And there we go. We're delegating config to our security tooling account. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna set up a org config role, right? We're gonna create a role that will allow us to access all of these accounts through our organization. So what we're going to do is create that org config role for our workshop. Let me copy this so I can have it here handy as the role name. And we're going to have an assumed run policy, so we can assume that role, like config can assume this role, right, for that config aggregator. So we're going to paste this, and now we have this role created. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to attach one of our our manage policies to this role, so we can give permissions for config. So we're gonna do the AWS config role for organizations, right? And we're gonna do that one for the role that we just created. And this is the ARN the ARN of the policy that we're attaching, the config role for organizations. So we paste this, and now that policy has been attached to our role. The next thing that we need to do is to create the aggregator, right? And we're going to copy this ARN because we need it for the next step. So I'm going to have that in our, just going to copy it here. And as we go through that, let me bring this up to the screen so you can see what I'm copying. Oops, there we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to just ensure that we have that here. So basically, when we paste this role here, we need to substitute this role ARN for the thing what we just copied from our earlier step. So we're going to do that config role. Actually, I missed a step. I should have changed accounts. This role doesn't have to be in our management account. This role has to be in our security tooling account. So make sure that you switch accounts, and we're going to go again through what we just did. So basically, we're going to come back here, and we're going to go into our security tooling account, and we're going to recreate that role that we just created. So this is not valid anymore. Let's make sure that happens. And then we're going to start here on our Cloud Shell. And we're going to repeat the 2 steps that we just did for creating the role. We're going to create a config role, and we're going to call it /workshop. Oops. Config role /workshop. So we're going to create this with the assumed role policy that we did earlier. So config can use this role. And then we're going to attach the config role for organizations again to our role that we just created. So we paste this, it works. And we want to copy this role ARN again, as we did earlier, because this is what we're going to use on the next step. So we're going to create that config aggregator for our organization, right? And for that, what we're going to do is we're going to use this command that is basically the config service. Now we're going to put a configuration aggregator, and the name for this is going to be our org config aggregator workshop. And here's where we have to substitute that org role config ARN that we just did, right? So we're going to get that role ARN here, and we're going to paste it, and then up, we need to put the quotations are already there, so we don't need to do anything there. So we paste this, and it creates our config aggregator. So now we can make sure that this config aggregator has been created by describing those configuration aggregators. So we do this, and here it is. The org config aggregator workshop has been created. It takes a little bit of time to show on the console, so we're going to give it a few minutes. We're going to go through the next steps. We're going to set up that central AWS Access Analyzer, the central guard duty, and the central security hub, and then we'll go back to the console and see all those things that have been created. So the next step that we want to do is we want to go back to the management account to enable this delegation again as we did before. So we're going to go back to our management console. And let me start closing windows here because we're starting to have a lot of them open. So in our management account, we're going to go again to our Cloud Shell. And we're going to enable the trusted access for Access Analyzer. I can show you, before we get to that, I want to show you how that looks on the organization's console and what Cloud Shell is actually doing. So when we go here into the services, Access Analyzer, this is the service that we're going to be enable. Right now, the access is disabled. So if we come here and we click on open this Cloud Shell on a new tab, as we enable the access, the trusted access for Access Analyzer, we should be able to see this now here in organizations, right? So if we refresh, and we look again for Access Analyzer, the access has been enabled. So that's basically what this command is doing. And now what we're going to do is we're going to register that delegation again to our security tooling account like we did earlier, the delegated administrator. So we're going to get our security tooling account ID. And we're going to substitute it here. And now that delegation has been enabled, and we can start creating a service link role as well for this. This way, the way that we create this is we are going to create with the IAM API, we're going to create a service link role for our Access Analyzer service. So we do this and we paste it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and switch roles just in case. I'm going to copy this in case I need any of this information later. So this would be the service link role for Access Analyzer. So we're going to go back to our log archive, our security tooling account, and we are going to create Access Analyzer. For that, in this case, we're going to open here our Cloud Shell. And this is the command we're going to be using. Access Analyzer, we're going to create an analyzer. The name of our analyzer is going to be Organization Analyzer, and we're going to add this workshop. You can name it whatever you want. It's going to be an organization type, and we're going to do US West 2 because that's the region that we're working on. Paste. And this just takes a little bit. And here is our analyzer. Like, think of this, you will, Access Analyzer is a regional service. So for every region that you're using, or for every region that you would like your trails to be used, or you can use this central analyzer, you will have to create a different analyzer for each region. So let's say that you wanted to do, you're also doing the US East 1, so you would just have to create them on each of the regions. This can be automated through the CLI, so you wouldn't have to create them manually, right? But just so you know, it is a regional service. And now we have our analyzer created, and we can move towards setting up that central guard duty. We're going to go back again to our management account. I know it's a lot of changing accounts, but that's how the delegation of these services go. So again, we're going to come back up here. We're going to go to our Cloud Shell, and we're going to enable an admin account. So what we're going to do, this command is a little different. So we're going to enable organization admin account, right? And this is also going to be our security tooling account. So we're going to copy that ID. We're going to come up here, and we're going to just delegate it. So we click paste, and this should enable our guard to the organization admin account. Now that we have this, we can switch back to our security tooling account again. And once again, we'll create a detector, right? So we're gonna open here the terminal again. Before we change accounts back to our security tooling account, we need to create a detector in our management account. So we're gonna go ahead, we just delegated on the previous step this, and we already have a detector. So we don't need to create a detector in our account. So basically, I'm pretty sure that if we go here to guard duty, we have already a findings, usage, and model scans in this account. So this was probably done as we enable the aggregator for config. Our guard duty was enabled by default, so we don't have to do any of this. Now what we're going to be working is on adding these accounts. Since we delegated the administration of that, actually, no, it's not when we enable config. When we delegated the administration of guard duty, it created those detectors for us. So we're going to move to our security tooling account, and we're going to create, we're going to list those detectors in this account, right? So we're going to come here on Cloud Shell, and we're going to list the detectors that are available for us. And here we have our detector ID. Up, and what we're going to do is copy that ID, and we're going to go enable guard duty in our log archive account. So for that, we need our log archive account ID and our email addresses for each of these accounts. So first of all, we can go up here to our IAM Identity Center console, and we can grab those things, right? We have these account ID and email address for the management account, and the same thing for the log archive account. So we'll paste this here, and what we're going to be doing is substituting those variables in our command. So the first thing is the account ID for the management account. So we're going to paste that in here. We're going to grab also the email address for our management account. And we're going to grab our account ID for the log archive account and the email address for the log archive account. Last but not least, do not forget to update the detector ID that we copied earlier. So we're going to come here, grab this detector ID, and just paste it. Now we can paste this command on process accounts. It means that everything was created, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to update the configuration. So any new account gets added automatically. And how do we do that? We're going to update the configuration of the organization setup with our detector. So basically what we're going to do is substitute that detector ID here, and we're going to do the auto enable. So any new account that gets added, it would automatically be added to this detection system within guard duty. So we click paste, and it has been added. We added here our management account. We added our log archive account. So before we didn't have any if you remember, we didn't have any accounts within guard duty. So we come here and we reload this. We should have those accounts listed in here. So we have, you saw how we added manually our log archive account and our management account. And because we did the auto enable, we actually imported this shared services account and the shared services IAM account that we did. Let me make this big for a second so you see how this looks, how it is. So these two are not a member, but these two are a member. They're enabled. They were added automatically. So yeah, you can also invite accounts manually, but this would basically allow you to, every time a new account is added, they would get added automatically. Great, let's move to our last step on the workshop before we talk about service control policies again, and we go back to that piece that we didn't mention on the first episode on how to enable cost allocation types as well. So the next service we're going to be setting up is Security Hub on our organization. So for this, we need to go back again to our management account. So we're going to just go in here. We're going to go to our management account, and we are going to log in our Cloud Shell. And as we did before, we're going to start by delegating the administration of Security Hub to our security tooling account. So we're going to grab that ID again, and we're going to click paste. And now this has been enabled. In this case, we use the Security Hub command instead of the organizations command. And now what we're going to do is enable in our management account the security, the default standards for Security Hub. We can do that with this command, right? We are enabling Security Hub with the default standards. Right now, we had just delegated that, so we're just enabling Security Hub across the entire organization. So this way, what will happen is that any new account that gets added to the organization will automatically be added to Security Hub, and Security Hub will monitor for it. So when we click paste, this has been already, it takes very little. So now we can go to our security tooling account where we delegated this, and we can continue setting this up. The first thing that we need to do is add the log archive account and the management account, because they were already here, and those accounts might not have been added to our Security Hub deployment. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create member accounts for the log archive and for the management account. In this case, we only need the IDs of the accounts. We don't need the emails, so we can just come here and substitute that. One for the management, one for the log archive account. So we paste. And now what we're going to do is auto-enable in a very similar way we did earlier to make sure that any new account is automatically added, right? So we click here, we paste this, and now we would be able to see all the findings and the security standards across all the accounts. So what we can do is we can go to Security Hub. We'll click here. And Security Hub is enabled, right? And we can come, you would see that we have enabled these things here. We have the security standards. This might take a little bit to be enabled, but we have that integration that you can set up with different things. So we have different insights, findings, and our summary. As this, since we just enabled it, it might take a little bit for all of it to show up. But as this takes a little bit of time, I'll show you how config should be set up by now. So if we go to the config console, here we would be able to go to our aggregators. And this is the thing that we did on the first step, right? You see that this is our new aggregator. So here's where you would see all the accounts have been added from our organization. And you would be able to see all those, the regions that are enabled. And if you deploy any roles or any conformance packs, you would be able to check against those. We haven't deployed anything. We only set up the aggregator. So config still needs to be enabled in the accounts, and the roles and conformance packs need to be deployed. So config would check for them. So if we move past this, I would like to talk about Detective, but Detective, in order to configure Detective, we need to wait 24 hours after GuardDuty has been enabled. So if you're interested in using Detective and enabling Detective, you can follow the steps on the workshop that we pasted earlier, and I'll put the QR code again so you can walk through those yourself. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us or let us know. And that should help you enable it later on. Again, you need to do it from the management account before. You enable that, go to your security tooling account, and create the detective graphs that will be using the GuardDuty findings in order to analyze all those findings, right? And you can add new accounts and create member accounts with Detective, the same way we did with GuardDuty and we did with Security Hub. So let me move to the cost allocation tags that we didn't get to cover on the last episode. So let's go to our Cost Explorer console. Actually, we probably need to go first to our management account and do it from up there. So let's go back to the management account. Now that we are in our management account, we can go into our billing console. And from here, we can select the cost allocation tags. Right now, we have owner and team because are the two tags that we have. There's the two user-defined tags that we have. These are tags that I have assigned to my resources. And the cost allocation tags and AWS billing scans the environment and all the accounts in your organization to identify these tags. So you could enable these tags to filter your budgets and your cost across. So you would just enable them. And additionally, besides the user-defined tags, there are the tags that you will be assigning to your resources in your environment. You will have a list of them here. We also have the AWS-generated tags, right? And as more resources are created and more services are used, you would have more of those AWS-generated tags. AWS tags are the ones that are started by the prefix AWS, and those can only be edited and added by service directly. These are not tags that you would be able to modify or edit on your own. So right now, we only have these AWS created by, which allows you to identify which role and what principal created the resource. So we can also activate it. And what this allows us is to go in our Cost Explorer and filter by tags, right? So we could use these tags in Cost Explorer across your environment to do this. So if you come here and do we click on Cost Explorer, and now that we have enabled those tags, you could come here and apply the tags created by. They might take a little bit to propagate. Cost allocation tags take a little bit, like the same way it took about 24 hours to enable them. So until they come here, it might take a little bit of time for them to propagate all the way through your environment. But you should be able to select them here later, and you can filter the cost on each of the accounts, on each of the resources from here using these tags as well. Last, we talked about service control policies, and we talked about controls, right? So I wanted to make sure that we're able to protect the services that we just did. So from our management account, I want to set up an SCP that would allow you to protect these services and to not allow these services to be disabled in any of the accounts, right? Because like if you're adding these accounts, but somebody has admin access on those accounts and they disable it, then there is the purpose of aggregating that view gets lost. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to use this service control policy to help us do that. So we already enabled the service control policies on our previous episode, so we don't have to enable them again. And we're going to create that policy. We can do this through the CLI, or we can also do it through the console, as we saw earlier. So we would go here in the service control policies. You could create that policy as we created that modification of the log archive resources, or we could use that command line. So let me show you that. So now that we are in our console again, on our terminal, we're going to create that policy using the CLI. That policy is created using a organizations command. Of course, we're going to use the create policy. But what policy are we going to be creating? Let me show you. We're going to be doing a security tools guardrails kind of policy. Like we're going to make sure that we cannot delete invitations, that we cannot disable Security Hub, or we're going to disassociate Security Hub from that management account, right? All of these service, like the same thing we did with Security Hub, we're going to do it with Guard Duty, we're going to do it with Detective, we're going to do it with Config, and we're going to make sure that nobody can really stop our trail from logging, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this policy, and I have it here in this folder. So basically, we're going to just create that policy. To create that policy, we're going to paste this command. It is available on the workshop instructions, but basically it's the AWS Organizations with create policy, and we're going to just give it a content from a file, right? So this file is the file that I just showed you. We're going to give them the name of restrict the disablement of security tools. This is a service control policy. We have to pass that type of policy that we're creating because we have multiple types of policies. If you remember, we have tag policies, we have backup policies, and we have AI/ML policies, right? So this would be a service control policy. And we're going to add a description so we remember, and we want to make sure that we get that policy ID so we can attach it later to our any OU that we want an account specific, right? So we're going to paste this command that great doesn't exist. So let's make sure that we bring that resources, policies, SCP, signals, Guardrail. Well, let's just copy it here. That way, and how to here, this doesn't work well, just create it on file. Oh, CD, that's why it wasn't working. Never mind, apologies for that. There we go, and this should create that policy. This would be the policy ID. So let's copy that so we don't lose it as well. So we'll paste it here in the bottom. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach that policy to the root of our organization, right? So in order to do that, we probably want to get the root of the organization ID. So we're going to go in services, we're going to open the organization service, and we're going to get that root org ID. So there's this one here. So we're going to get that one. We're going to come to our Visual Studio. This would be the root ID. And now we can go back here. We close this. And what we're going to do is AWS Organizations, attach policy and the policy ID that we just created earlier. So we're going to grab that one. And now we want to target one of our OUs. In this case, it's going to be the root OU. So every account in our organization would be protected by this SCP. And we do that. And magically, this works. So we can verify that this has been attached. If we go back here to our organizations console and we go to the root OU, we should be able to see that we have the SCP attached. The same thing that we just did, we have all of it here. And that's all I had for this. We can go back and check. Hopefully, Security Hub has been finished setting up. So we can go in here and ensure that this is stop. Actually, since this is the management account, we probably should go to our log archive. No, so our security tooling account, that is where we delegated it to. So we'll come here, we go to security. We can go to our dashboard. Probably we want to configure that aggregation since we don't have it. We'll select all the regions. We'll save. And here we can see which accounts are here. Like all the accounts are, like we enable these two accounts. We didn't enable these two accounts by default. We could add them as well. So now we have all the aggregation of all the events set up on US West 2 because that is what we selected as our home region. But the 2 accounts that we created earlier, we can see them in settings, right? The management account and the log archive account are enabled. These 2, we didn't enable them, so they show us not a member. This is the other way that you can add accounts to your Security Hub deployment. We didn't see that earlier. We did it through the CLI, but you can also do it through the console. And again, they're added via organizations because this is our delegated admin, right? So this is where you would see all of those things. You have the delegated administration here for the entire OU, service permissions, et cetera, and all the findings that happen, and all those things would show here. This organization is new. We don't have any resources deployed besides what we just did, so that's why we don't have anything in here, right? But you could enable more standards. You could see more benchmarks that are here. So again, right now we don't have any data for these because we don't have any resources, and it might take a little bit of time for all of them to run. But yeah, let's go back and we'll close the presentation. I'll put up the link to the workshop again, and we'll go from there. And here is the link again for the workshop. So let's just go through a quick summary of what we learned today. We kind of did a recap of what we did on episode 1. Cloud foundations, multi-account strategy, why is it important? Control Tower as a managed service to get started with your multi-account environment. We went through what the delegated administrator feature does for you. It enables you to get out of that management account, provide the same services to your entire organization from a delegated account. In this case, your security team is using the security account to do all of these things. We also revised the account structure that we recommend for that security tooling account at the security OU. And we also touch bases on what goes into the infrastructure OU and what services can be delegated to the account in the infrastructure OU. And then we went through the types of guardrails or controls for your environment, preventive and detective. We dived a little bit more. We used preventive controls to protect that management account and all the delegated services that we set up in your security tooling account, so they're not being able to be disabled by anybody in the organization, right? And that's it. So what's next? We have a lot of reading that we can give you. We have the 2 workshops that we did. Episode 1 on the bottom left corner, getting started with your cloud foundation, setting up those capabilities. And then we have this multi-account security governance workshop that can guide you through what we did today. And on the top of this page, we have the multi-account strategy white paper on the top left that walks you through the overall strategy of what we are setting and why, the types of accounts, and how you can go from a basic starter production organization. As your environment grows, how do you create new organizational units, new accounts, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want to take a look at a more holistic approach and the different capabilities beyond those first 3 that we set up on the first workshop, on the first episode, you can also read that Cloud Foundations on AWS white paper that guides you through the different capabilities needed in your environment. Thank you very much for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed and learned, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.